You would have a seat. All right, we're a little late, but I would like to call to order the July 11th meeting of the Village of Wesley Chapel Council. If you will rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you will, please remain standing. We're honored to have Dr. Ken Thomas here with us tonight. Dr. Thomas is the interim pastor at Siler Presbyterian, and we're honored to have him offer the invocation for us tonight. Thank you, Dr.
Glad to. Please pray with me. Lord, we give you thanks for this country. A lot of things in it are broken and messed up, but it still looks like the best country in the world that I've seen. And we're grateful for the privilege of being here, the privilege of making it better. We pray for this community. I thank you for those who are willing to serve, give of their time and energy. And so I ask, Lord, that you bless this meeting. Pray that you give these council members wisdom, give them clear deliberation, give them what they need in order to accomplish what's best for this community. I thank you for the people who come here to share what's on their hearts. And I pray that they might be able to share what's clear and be heard. We thank you, Lord, for all your gifts and all your blessings. We ask that you would continue to do so, not just so we can be consumers, but so we've got something to share with somebody else. I pray these things earnestly and honestly, and for those of us who believe, in the name of Jesus. Amen. Amen.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas.
Okay. So I think it's public comments. Nobody? Nobody? Nobody else see y'all today? Hey, all right. Well, Karen, you can yell at me anytime. So, additions, deletions, and adoption of agenda. I would like to add a few things on the consent agenda. I would like to add, Council, you have her application in front of you, appointing Sandra Burke to the other alternate position to the planning board. She will be an invaluable member. Really excited about her willingness to serve. If we could add Item 9A right after Parks and Rec report to discuss a building plaque related to the construction of Town Hall. Yeah. And then if we could add a 14A, we wanted to give a little update about the website proposal we received from our current website provider. We'll just talk about that a little bit. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add to leave a change?
Only a question with the addition of Dr. Burke. Is that? Yeah. Where does that put us in the number of alternates on the planning board?
We would have 3.
We'd have 3. Okay, good.
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
All in favor? Okay. So that leads us to our consent agenda.
Motion to approve consent agenda.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay. Brings us to our planning board report.
The planning board meeting itself in June was focused solely on their initial review of the comprehensive plan. We presented it to them and had a lot of good questions and discussion about it, and they're going to take action on it at their July meeting prior to, I assume, the public hearing for the council in August. Other matters, there was potential for there being a Board of Adjustment meeting next week that has since come and gone. The applicant who has had a zoning violation in Pinnacle decided to correct the violation and not seek a variance. But that will not be happening. Fortunately, I guess, for all of us. Otherwise, it's fairly quiet. Have been having lots of discussions with people about potentially building things. I think I mentioned last month that we're getting a number of emails and phone calls about building without sewer right now, larger lots, etc. Have one that's probably one or two that are probably pretty serious about moving forward, but have not received anything formal on those yet.
Any questions for Ron?
Going back to the planning board's discussion of the comp plan, were there any items that they needed more information from the comp plan steering committee on, or was it just mainly?
Not the members who are present.
So are we still able to do the public hearing in August?
Yeah, they will be taking action in July. It was just their first time having an in-depth discussion about the comprehensive plan. So,
And so and during item number 13, we will call for that appointment. Bonnie and I did meet with Waxahachie's town manager and a commissioner. Just an initial meeting before the late June community stakeholder meeting for Cuthbertson Road. I did ask how many Wesley Chapel members could go, and she said, well, we really have a small space. So I've asked Lori as our CRPTO rep to go, and I will be there too, and we'll report back. I think they really wanted to get input from all the stakeholders, the fire departments, Wesley Chapel, Waxhaw, some neighborhoods, a couple state elected officials. So just, and Vaughn, thank goodness for Vaughn. He did tell us that the best place to start is getting the road reclassified from A.
and I emailed Jeff after our meeting. I sent him the NCDOT policy on functional classification changes, and so probably after this meeting, he and I and probably Bjorn will get together and decide who would be submitting, or whether we would jointly submit that to CRTPO. But it has to go through the MPO before it goes to the state for reclassification.
And so what are we seeking to,
I'm sorry?
what are you seeking to reclassify?
So Cuthbertson Road is currently classified as a local road,
Right.
which means it's no different than the road in front of your house. Basically the same thing. We can tell they're very similar. And so what we would try and do would be get it reclassified, probably not as a collector road, because I think it's probably gone much beyond that. It's probably a minor thoroughfare at this point. It's not 84, but it's just kind of a step below that, really, in the kind of peak volume it sees at certain hours of the day.
That is exciting. That's very exciting. So we'll report back at our August meeting. Any more questions for Vaughn? Finance officer report, Cheryl.
Okay. So June is the end of the fiscal year, so these are your preliminary June numbers because there's going to be more accruals and adjusting entries, but it's the preliminary numbers. During the month of June, I did a budget transfer. I moved $200 to office expense and $500 to park and rec, other supplies and materials, and took $200 from insurance, workers' comp, and $500 from park and rec, recreation events. So, let's see. We got in our quarterly payments on shared revenues. The telecommunication services were a little weak yet, but that's not a big dollar item. We're looking good on everything else. I may have mentioned it last month, but the alcoholic beverage tax didn't come in as strong as we had anticipated either. Otherwise, all the expenditure accounts are within budget for the end of the year. This
Increase
isn't.
some of that stuff.
No,
For
this
time.
isn't affected by that. It's a weird cut. The state has their own way of coming up with calculations. And one thing they did say about the alcoholic beverage, it's from beer and wine. So if people are drinking the hard stuff and not as much beer and wine, that would be one reason why beer and wine, the alcoholic beverage tax, didn't come in strong. But otherwise, it's all based on populations and stuff, and it has nothing to do with what is in our town.
And what's actually.
Yeah, like sales tax has nothing to do with what's in Wesley Chapel. So. And I've been busy with everything else and really didn't get to do anything else on ARP.
But we're still continuing with the audit, we're still continuing with our plan to reimburse after court expenses, so the ARP funds can go back to the general fund. Any questions for Sharon? Sharon, do you have anything else?
I don't.
Then, and you don't have to stay for all of our fun. It can get real fun in here, but Deputy Wicker's always nice to listen to. But don't feel bad if you leave. Come on up, Deputy Wicker.
Oh.
Hello. So, I think I'm going to start back at April. April, May, and June. So for April, obviously we had 4 car break-ins up there at Dogwood Park. All of them, the windows smashed out.
Nice.
Let's see, three larcenies there at Target. And some of these that are showing up on the report, when I look at them, they're not even in the village, so I'm not sure how they're showing up on our reports. I don't know. But for April, there were only 7 motor vehicle crashes that month. So that's pretty much it for April. For May, 2 more car break-ins at Dogwood, same thing, windows broken out. And that was pretty much it. And 11 crashes that month. Yeah, that was it for May. For June, let's see, 3 larcenies at Target, a car break-in in Champion Forest. There was a guy going around, passing around fake $20 bills. He was living in a tent over here, kind of in that little strip where they're building the new animal hospital. But we figured out who he was, got him arrested. So the tent is still there, but he's gone. I think he just moves from place to place. So we got that taken care of, and then there was 10 motor vehicle crashes that month, and that was pretty much it. So car break-ins were a big thing.
With car break-ins, we're working on later in the meeting, we're going to be talking about security cameras for the park. Will that send information directly to you or just directly to the sheriff's office? And then they have to turn around and contact you?
It can do both. If I'm working, it can go straight to my laptop.
Great.
If not, take for instance the one in St. John's.
Yeah.
It goes directly to someone at the office within a matter of seconds.
Yeah.
Car comes in, stolen tag or stolen car.
Yeah.
Hey, XYZ car just went in. We'll go over there, find it. So, I mean, it's within a matter of seconds. It's not like a 5 or 10 minute delay. It's a matter of seconds.
So what exactly gets communicated to the sheriff's office if a car triggers or?
Yeah, if it's a stolen car, it'll shoot video or it'll take a picture. White Toyota, this tag number just went in the neighborhood. We'll go over there, and we've been pretty successful. The chase they had a couple weeks ago, maybe in Indian Trail, right off Rogers Road, stolen car out in Charlotte. I mean, we got the notification within a few seconds. There, found the car. It was 2 juveniles.
So it's a communication from those cameras to the sheriff's office to help you.
Yeah, it gets, I don't inner workings of it and all that. But once someone enters a stolen car, it goes into their database. So if that car drives by it, it's got a stolen tag, or that car is stolen, it'll trigger, hey, and it'll put a timestamp on it, this and that. So within a few seconds, we'll get an alert, and then we'll.
So how will that work? Sorry.
No.
So you're not downloading or transmitting all the data from the car.
Like what?
Like 20 cars come in today, none were stolen. That data doesn't get transmitted to them.
Only if it's a stolen tag, stolen car, something like that. That's when we'll get it.
And so then what happens when there's a break-in into a car that's not stolen or anything else? Then you just use the video?
There's no video. It's just still photos. But
No.
they can,
Yeah.
say for instance, if it's at nighttime, nighttime everything's black. So if it takes a picture of the rear of the car with the taillights, you can go into the software for Flock
Okay.
and put the search criteria in it, and it can identify the car just by the taillights.
But does the car have to be stolen or on a list, or can we just say we're on the lookout for any specific car?
Yes.
That's,
If I remember correctly from the meeting, correct me if I'm wrong.
And
Council, I have a question. I'm thinking that we're probably going to have to rehash a lot of these same questions whenever Brad presents the proposal for the budget amendment. Can we hold off on the questions about the flock camera if Brandon, if you're willing to stay?
My only
So
question
that we
was,
can communicate those at the same time?
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if Brad specifically would know what information and how it gets to Brad
Sure.
and how fast.
Okay.
Yeah, they can set it up where it's in my laptop, and when I'm working, I'll get it. Or you can do text message, email. So if I'm out eating, I can get a text message on, hey, this car,
Yeah.
So we got a car of interest. It's a gray Toyota. Be able to look out for a gray Toyota with the tag, and a gray Toyota pulls into the park, for example. It's going to send you a message.
12 seconds. 12 seconds from passing the camera to sending a text.
Awesome.
yeah, it's quick. So,
so you'll stay to Brad's presentation on the block camera? Any questions for Brandon before we are, I don't think it's on here, but we are full speed ahead with our national night out planning. So mark your calendars, October 4 at 6 p.m., 6 to 8, Target parking lot. We do have commitments. We're partnering with the sheriff's office and also we're going to have a presence from the Wesley Chapel Volunteer Fire Department. So,
and I'm going to try to get highway patrol, maybe wildlife. So
we're really excited about that event and getting it restarted. It's been a few years since Wesley Chapel hosted it.
and it'll be cooler.
August.
Absolutely.
One question, Brandon.
Yep.
And I'll ask you this every time I see you. Are there areas that you see that we need to concentrate on to improve with, or areas of concern that you think we need to focus on?
You want my honest opinion?
Sure.
Cameras at the park.
Okay.
I think that would, I think it's a group, and they go around all over the state. They'll start here, go around, and they'll just work their way back around. So, knock on wood, hadn't heard any lately, but it's probably just a matter of time. So,
Okay.
2 cameras or whatever,
Yeah.
I think that'll be way beneficial.
And I would like to talk more about how that situation works when none of those cars are in the database to seek out how that helps.
Okay.
Thank you, Brandon.
Yep.
Thank you. Parks and Rec report. Come on up.
Hey, council. Okay. Lots of paper, sorry. I'll go down the agenda items as I listed. There was a gardening club approached us about doing sharing of plant cuttings and things like that. I had sent an image of what they sent us an example of. The committee would like to work with them, and I haven't called them yet until I got to speak to the council, but to make it a little bit nicer looking, number one, find an appropriate location, number two, in other words, don't put it near the playground because it's just going to you know, things torn up and trashed. And then maintenance, you know, that's another question I would ask of them. Okay, is somebody coming to refill the water, or somebody coming, because that should not be a John job, for instance. So we are, as I said, generally in favor of it, and just looking for council to say, you know, if there's any objections to it or any questions you guys might have.
Well, I like the concept, I just thought it was a little bit cheesy looking from the photograph, as long as it's put in the right place, so that it's not something that people are going to see on a regular basis, but it's by the shipping container
One of
or
the
something
things
like that.
compared to this, well, I hadn't even thought closer to the garden that they did alongside the walkway.
The Rotary Garden?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and I have 4 to 6 sections of that same exact, I think it's Lowe's, Home Depot, doesn't matter, fencing she's showing. So the other part of it would be to make a triangle out of it, wire tie the corners together in the middle so it doesn't blow over, it doesn't knock over, and then do something a little bit nicer with at least the sign and that kind of thing.
But this isn't going to be a year-round thing, this is just going to be summer, every summer?
Well, again, that'll be a discussion I have with the gardening club, but yes, spring, I would say spring and summer. Yeah, spring, summer, maybe even fall.
Okay.
And how often will they be checking on it?
I don't know yet. I wanted to make sure you guys didn't have any big objections before I approach her. I'll call her tomorrow and Donna, her name? You remember better than I do.
Deborah.
Deborah. It's a Debbie. Yeah.
Debbie.
Now that you said it,
I can check on it on my part, so it doesn't become untidy.
Counselor, y'all go for proceeding with this item, trying it out? All right.
Yeah, and again, trial basis, I would tell her the same thing, by the way, but you said trial, because that's exactly, I said it here, but that's what we're going to do.
And also suggest checking out some they have elsewhere. If they have somewhere else, just check them out without them.
Yeah, they've done it in a
See if
couple
it's
other-
maintained.
Yeah, a couple other parts. So we will keep an eye on it. Obviously, John's there, he'll see it, so. Okay, thank you. The next item is, I mentioned we wanted to think about doing a music event, and we figured the best time to do it might be the weekend right before school starts. So, that's Saturday. So, that is,
August 27th?
The weekend before Labor Day.
yes.
27th. No.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I prepared a preliminary budget in front of you. We wanted to use the 485 band. They played before. Getting good, they play a good range of music. We have, of course, the deputies as we normally would, food trucks, because we're aiming for a 5 to 8 time frame, make it in the evening because it'll be a little cooler. Early evening, sunset is not till 8:30, 8:35, if I remember correctly. Still. So, and so we could get people across. Obviously, Porter Johnson sings. We would like to look at the bounce house. Depending, we know the rules. If they're going to give us a COI, but then they get what their contract says, don't ignore then we can't use the mic. We understand that. So we'll make sure the bill is covered for us to go through the show, as we always do. Banners, Cheryl mentioned a different provider that we'll try and work with. We've gone with one of the locals in the last, and that was a little higher than we normally, because they're having supply issues just like other people because of the environment right now. We need to set up a sound system, so we would have the sound person and the truck rental to take the equipment there. And just miscellaneous expenses. So a total of $3,260. And
How many banners are you going to do?
I would like to do 3 again, just because it's more transparent as you're driving past.
So 2 at the park and
Well, the way we had the corner at CVS was a V so that you could see from all four directions.
Are you doing reusable ones? Are you gonna do like reusable?
Yes, and we learned a little bit something from the last event. I mean, we gotta get rid of a lot of the clutter, make the day and the time and the event larger font, and then maybe just a couple of mentions, food truck, live band, those kinds of things, and small print on the side, so go from there. But
So where's the third banner go?
two, it's the CVS, we actually had them
Two.
in the
You're going to-
and then one at the park.
And at the park, driving parking lot.
Yeah.
No, it'll be in the front.
That's actually, we had one maybe, before people come to the park.
We could put something in the bulletin board, since that's the main entrance in and out.
I'm
Just a-
just thinking of like people routinely kind of might not come by that way.
Good
They're
point.
captive audience.
Also be nice to have like a for sale sign type, instead of a banner, just said live music, have a date. We had a sign like that, we put it up every time we're gonna have live music. Just keep changing the date.
Normally what we do, Laurie, is that if there's banners are available early, before we post them on the street, we put one in the park early, so everybody coming in and out sees it, and then that gets moved to the corner, so we don't have to buy an extra banner.
Yeah, thanks.
Right, we have to get the deputy request in 45 days in advance, so we're just about there. And so Cheryl will do that. It's an automated system now. I'm automating quotes.
We just gotta make sure that people leave it out faster.
Right. Well, we can have announcements about that as well. I think that's the way you handle that. Okay, we're glad you're here at the playground, but when the deputy's crossing the street, will be done at 8:30, and you need to go. We don't want to do anything after it gets dark. Crossing 84 wouldn't be good, even with deputies. It puts them in danger as well, actually.
But we feel like the issues that we had with the last event with the deputies, the system in place now,
Well, we'll double check. That was, one of them was unavoidable, the other one never got filled apparently, but we'll be checking that. Cheryl and I both learned from that one that we need to check with them before the event to see where we're at. You assumed based on prior events that it was always filled, but there were a lot of other events going on that day as well, which is kind of what we ran into today.
Are you asking Brandon to be on duty that day or no?
It's up to council.
Are you working?
What day is it?
August 20.
Saturday, August 27th,
Yeah.
5 to 8.
Yeah, awesome.
Not sure yet, but
No.
I'm sure I can work again.
If you can.
5 to what?
5 to 8.
5 to 8.
So, council, any questions for Brad, or do we have a question?
Will be just music and no alcohol,
No alcohol.
food and live music.
Oh, yeah, we're going to try for 2 food trucks, and maybe one that does desserts or something like that. So
Who would the sound person be?
That's the guy
Austin, the one we've used for the past.
Yeah.
Who?
Austin, you get the same guy we've used before.
Austin.
is he contract to the village? Or
Yes.
is he does?
We trained them in our sound system.
We do it like 7 times.
Is it Wetmore or Whitmore?
I'll motion to move forward with the summer jam event, August 27th.
Second one question, we have money in the budget covered, right?
Yes.
Yep, I second that.
There's any further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous?
And just to follow up, and I know, appreciate the vote, thank you. But we budgeted for, I think, 5 events for next year. We've got 4 major events that the village is really doing right now, which would be this event, the end of summer jam, would be the Fall Bash, Coco's with Santa, Coco and Carol's with Santa, and then a car show again. The Easter event, we don't take the full load on. Matter of fact, Southbrook does most of that. And National Night Out is being coordinated through Amy. And then, what am I missing? Movie night, which is here. Same thing, she's trying to get hold of it now about which movie and things like that. So we have, and for those, we can take that fifth event money and kind of split it up, not for a single event.
The other thing that we probably need help from all of our boards and committees in publicizing is our trash pickup in the fall. We have worked with litter busters before, and I think last time we had Siler use Mr. Ruley, Deb, and myself for our trash pickup. So it might be nice if we start putting it on our calendars now and telling our boards and committees that we will get a few more volunteers for our trash pickup to beautify our building.
Yeah, we've done a few of those in the past, and it's always been an issue. And I've been on several of them with a very small group. So I think it's good.
If you add that to your agenda, just
Yep, I just
down the
wrote it
same
on
day.
we just wrote it down.
Okay.
Do you have a date for that yet, or you're still working on
Yeah,
it?
it's September.
24th. It already went out to the Sunshine List and social media.
September 24th? I'm assuming in the morning, usual.
Yeah, the time is on the Facebook page, and I think it went out on the Sunshine List.
Oh.
I can't remember. I'll get it to you then.
I didn't have a time, I don't think.
I'll get you the time, Brad.
Okay. I remember seeing that one on the Sunshine List. Okay.
Well,
Friday it went out.
some have been going to people's junk mail.
I check spam all the time. Lots of things going on, but thank you. We prepared a very quick, because we think, again, publicizing things just like you're trying to do with the trash event is important. So we prepared that flyer. I sent you a copy of, Julie actually worked on that. Just sort of between now and the end of the year, what we're thinking of. That's this single page item. So we're going to look at working with the communications committee and town staff. Maybe this is something we can send to the Sunshine List as well.
Yeah, I thought this was great. I'd like to see a full fiscal year calendar, even if it's just for the committee and for us, so we can have that. Because I think it's really helpful to see everything instead of it's like, oh, no, there's this one, we aren't thinking ahead or anything. Because also, like, what was it, the Easter event, there was conflict with Siler, or not Siler, but Southbrook, and, you know, it just can help us to avoid those things. And to your point about the communications, I think it's a great idea. So this can go on the website calendar. And these are events things, so I think that's great.
And I forgot to also mention on the end of summer jam is that we've already checked with Southbrook, that we can use the parking lot. So they're already clear on that. They're already good. So doing something like this also enables us to kind of get in advance of this and not do with them last minutes as well. So, but also with you guys.
Do you have that posted in the information board park?
I do not as yet, no. I would just show it to council, and we can blow it up.
Yeah,
and make it
I think that it's great, and I think also it can help us streamline the approvals and stuff, because you can ask us now, we can look at it, we know we budgeted 5 events, that you can get ahead to make sure we don't run into some of the obstacles we did last year with availability of people and things. So it should make your life easier.
Well, also, it'll help with staffing, and not staffing, so we're volunteers, to get people, you know, right now, schools will be back in, for most of these events. So there'll be a beta club and all those types of people looking for hours, so, yeah.
I noticed the National Night Out, I think it's really at 6 o'clock, not 6:30.
Okay, originally, I think what we saw was 6, we can fix that.
Sure.
Thanks, Joe.
When you get a final version, just email it me and I'll print it and I'll stick it on all the notice boards in the park.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, John. It's
Yeah.
okay with council?
Yeah.
Just making sure.
There are people who like to come to the park, they should make it easy for them to know what's going on.
Right, and people write things on the calendar and, might get people there. Okay. I'll go on to the next item then, the proposal for large group usage. There has been a number of complaints this year regarding use of the playground in specific for a summer camp that's being held by a group. It's actually a group in town that does, has volunteered at various events in the past and done demos and things like that of what they do. But anyway, and that's not for the summer camp. That's the first I knew they had a summer camp this year, but they may have had it before. So, and they're bringing a couple of 15-passenger vans full of kids to the, more than a couple, obviously, but full of kids to the park, and a couple of residents have gone there with their kids and haven't been able to get in. So, we thought of a number of things. We talked about a number of things at the committee meeting. Certainly we could say without reserving it or things like that, but that puts a lot more stress on staff. It puts a lot more stress on who's going to go down and police it and all those types of things. So we thought at first we'd try the approach to post, have a sign right at the entry gate. I hate to put more signs up. I really am not a big lover of signs at park, but people can abuse it. You've got to do it. And I even thought of saying any park amenity, because you wouldn't want the same thing happening at the fishing pier, for instance. Not that it could happen, but I mean, so that's the language we came up with, and I ran past the committee. I know there's quite a few words there, but I wanted to get enough soft of it to not say we're coming after you, but at the same time saying, hey, come on. So,
you also probably have to run it back, right? I mean,
George, yeah.
I might give you a couple of word edits, but
and that's fine.
I feel like we had this very same conversation last year about large groups with the playground and everything. I feel like this is deja vu.
It was that mommy group, remember?
It was what?
That mommy group posted in Facebook.
Yeah.
They didn't go. They didn't ever come. But yes, that was going to be something like that too.
Yeah. So we avoided it last year. Okay.
John, as a park employee, what are your thoughts?
So I can give you an update. The group came last week with about over 50 kids. I had an opportunity when they were in line to count them. I got to 50, but I didn't catch some of them moving around. Probably 60 kids-ish were there. The time they'd been there before, and they just overwhelmed the playground. And mums got up and left because they had little kids. I did talk to I asked who was in charge. I talked to a teenage or early 20s kid who was the chief counselor. I said, dude, you can't really take over the playground like this when little families are using it. They came this week, they just used the field, they didn't use the playground. So they listened, and they didn't overwhelm and chase people out of the playground this week. Prior 2 times I've seen them there, yes they did. Has that nipped the problem in the bud? I don't know. I do know other parks allocate a day and a time for groups, not to chase the groups off, to let the groups use the park, and say groups can use the park between 10 and 1 on this specific day, to give them an opportunity to enjoy the park as well. And it also gives other users of the park a warning, hey, don't go this time.
That's right.
Because there's going to be groups there. I have noted that between about 11:30, 12-ish till about 2, the playground is really, really quiet. I think all the mums must take the kids for lunch or take them home or something. But there's a lull, that midday area where there's very few people in the playground. Morning, extremely busy. Afternoon, early evening, extremely busy in the playground. So if you were to consider a time when groups were allowed,
Okay.
I'd look at that window
Yeah.
in the middle of the day.
John, other than the 20-something-year-old kid that was in charge that day, did anybody from the town or Parks and Rec reach out to the business and talk to them in a more formal?
We decided to
No,
let.
because we didn't have a policy, so I just said, look, it just ain't on chasing young mums and the little kids out there.
I think if I was a business owner and I was causing a problem, the first thing I'd want to do is talk to
Yeah.
you or Parks Director or the town council about how do we get along? And I think it sounds like we did that to some extent. But again, if it's just a 20-something-year-old kid who's there on a daily basis versus the guy
He
who
said he would
runs.
pass it on to the owner, which I think he did, because I believe the owner was here this week with the kids. They were exercising in the field, they were out on the field, not
That doesn't affect
not bothering anyone.
Yeah, it doesn't affect the regular park goers.
No.
And I offered to go the same route, but we decided we would wait and see if it continued to be a problem, and we'd let Parks and Rec have a get rid of policy before we step it up.
Right.
But from our
We did talk
perspective,
about it, so.
it's enforcement. You know, how can we enforce our?
Well, you tell them first, and then if it continues, then the enforcement is the next, then how do you do that?
Well, we had a problem a couple of years ago with
Yeah.
2 or 3 schools using the park as a cross-country training facility, and that was more like 100-plus kids. And when we went to the directors of each one of the schools and said, look, you can't just use the park as your personal private training facility because you've got 100 kids running down the trails. We told them, as long as you're not being disruptive to the regular guests, you're fine. And they were disruptive to the regular guests and stopped coming.
One thing I have learned is people don't read signs. So you can put up all the signs you want, you're still going to need somebody to enforce. Almost on a weekly basis, I'm talking to people about taking pets, dogs into the playground and smoking in the playground. And we have the signs that say you can't do that, but people don't.
Yep.
Well, and the thing is I can see on the day camp or any group like that, somebody made the decision, not the person driving through the parking lot necessarily. There's just somebody else there said, I was told to do this, and they're just coming.
No.
Right. And I'm all fine with going to, and again, whichever, again, go to them and ask them, remind them about this type of thing, that's fine. But that's just today's group. That's my point. So,
Without.
But if it's an organized group, there's always somebody at the top. Right.
Yeah.
That we can go to and say, look, you're causing this problem, how do we work together?
Yep.
And most of the time, they're not going to be belligerent, they're going to try to work with us. If they give a specific time that they can come and not disrupt the rest of the people, or if they can come to a specific day.
we weren't, Park and Rec talked about that option because I think John or someone forwarded that other park thing, and we kind of said, yeah, but if I want to go at Wednesday at 12 o'clock and you say that they have one of it with my kids, my personal kids, not any, then no. I mean, I don't like that. I don't like the idea of just sort of blocking off the time because it almost sounds like everybody's giving a little, I get it, but at the same token, you're saying, hey, I don't,
Hi.
most parents or whatever, hey, let's go to the park. And it's spur of the moment, so they show up.
Yeah.
You said they're going to read the fact that it's blocked off on Wednesday from 11 to 2, whatever.
So the Parks and Rec recommendation is pre-approval of any groups larger than 15 to use the park.
Oh.
Yes.
It doesn't negate them from using the park as a whole. It's any one amenity. that they take over. Yes. They can't take over. They should not take over. Can't.
Who would give that approval?
When we had COVID, we had yoga groups out there, we had weightlifting groups out there, and they were small, they were less than 15 people, but, they didn't bother the rest of the park goers. It only becomes an issue when a group shows up and starts bothering people who want to walk their kids, walk their dog, play on the playground, something anybody should be able to do at any time of
But John said, well, he spoke to them, and so the next time they came, they split it out. And that's exactly what we're trying to get to. Hey, you know, one group that stays on the grass and does, you know, their calisthenics or whatever, that's great, it's fine.
So
15 people at the pier, 15 people at the, you know.
if St. Rock came to us and said, we'd like pre-approval to have more than 15 people at the park, what would that process look like?
We weren't in favor of that.
So we would just all back go?
If you guys want that, that's up to you. I mean, you know, but no, I mean,
No.
we're not necessarily in favor because it
No.
blocks off
Right.
usage by the normal public.
Then do you need the pre-approval? If we're not going to give them approval, or should it just say no more than 15 per group at any one time?
And that's what we agreed with.
And do not take out that unless pre-approval has been received?
Oh, yeah.
That's it there.
Yes, I did put that in there because we did have some conversation about it, but again,
You're not going to,
it was sort of leaning towards the language of what was discussed. You know, in terms of what other towns do, but without setting a specific date and time. But if they came and said they wanted to use every day of the week from 11 to 2, I would be the first one to say absolutely not.
but what if they just wanted to do one Wednesday from 11 to 2?
And I
If
think
they wanted to do Tuesday from 9 to, you know,
No.
11,
No.
you would have to have somebody there, sort of like what John just said, saying, here's when the busy parts are, and that's now during summer. What happens when it's, you know, kids are back in school or back?
I think
that's
it's
an
summer
issue,
camp, it's summer rock, summer camp, that coming. And then it's, you know, 3 busloads of kids, it's 50
Yeah,
kids.
I just think, you know, to have a private enterprise use the park amenities as part of their facilities that then starts interfering with other people, that kind of gives me heartburn.
Here.
It just doesn't feel right. If they shouldn't offer events that need manage without consuming the park. But it's not that big, it's not that big.
Not that.
And I had people talk to me saying this isn't right, and I think somebody sent an email and also complaining that we were chased out of the playground.
Yeah.
Well, right now, we don't have a policy. I think we need a policy. And I think we also need something that we can point to whenever those instances pop up. We can say, well, this is why, because it's our policy. I say we start with this. Odds are that we don't have any requests from any groups wanting 15 or more. If we do at that point, then we analyze the policy again and possibly change it at that point. But I think we need to get something started.
Well, we have a policy about groups, right, and how many cars they can bring?
Yeah.
If you can have up to, I don't remember off the top of my head, but that's what came out of last summer's problem.
But this is,
But this is
using
busing,
many
it's
vehicles,
not
and busing the mid essentially. So,
Should be
Talk about
to
the
say more
loophole.
buses.
And then to your point, what you end up having is we're gonna have to be able to point to a policy.
Yeah.
But most likely it's gonna be
Yeah.
after the fact. Most people
Yeah.
are not going to
Yeah. Yeah.
ask permission, they're gonna ask forgiveness
I
after.
agree 100%. Yeah.
So what do you think?
I don't know if there's anything else you could do with the wound.
Right.
Anything. I mean,
John Q. Public is gonna say, it's a public park, I'm gonna take my kids to this public park.
I agree. Yeah. So we need to vote on this.
Well, are we leaving in, if we're not gonna have pre-approval for groups, are we leaving that part in? I think we gotta have George approve it. We need a motion to amend the group policy for the park to include this statement, and then a motion to purchase signs.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Can I make a suggestion rather than a new sign? Can we just amend the park rule sign to add no groups allowed? And then we not got all different signs everywhere we go. The same park rule sign, I'll just take down the existing one and put a new one up with a new rule that says no groups over 15.
Without prior approval?
Sorry?
Without prior approval?
Yeah.
Is that a whole big sign? That sounds expensive.
That's the one in the information board?
The the ones I've got on the fence. I've got one on the notice board going into the playground, and I've got them on the fence in the playground, because I have to go, no smoking, no pets. I point them to the side.
Can you write really good block lettering? The permanent worker?
Yeah.
And I make a motion
Okay.
that we add the statement that Parks and Rec has submitted to us as our policy, pending George's approval. And we add it to the list of rules that we have in place now at the park. What I missed.
And the policy.
And the policy, yes.
Second that.
Any further discussion?
I don't think we should take the wording as it is if we're going to put it on the rule sign. It's too many words. It needs to be edited to rules. In my opinion.
Would you rather see a final version before you vote on this? Okay.
Would I? No.
Let's see what George comes back with.
Are you taking out the pre-approval part too?
As Parks and Rec submitted it, recommended.
You want to keep it in?
Yeah.
What we agreed to.
Oh, okay.
And we'll just shorten it for the sign, just say no groups more than 15.
Unless pre-approved, in parentheses.
And who approves?
Yeah. but
Who and
if
how?
If we're going to have a new approval process, we should have said that.
Right. We need a approval process, that's true.
And that
Which
just
is, again,
implies that we're
trying
trying to create a lot of administrative burden.
I agree too. It says we're going to entertain it, and we're all sitting here saying we're not going to entertain it, we're agree. Because it impacts our budget.
So we
I would say
we have a motion. Do we have a second? I guess.
we do have a second, so we're discussing it right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Who seconded?
Mike.
Mike seconded. Okay. Thank you.
But the motion was as it's worded here. And I think that's the appropriate wording.
Okay, I'll withdraw my motion.
No,
Withdraw my
George.
second.
Okay, I'll withdraw my motion. I'll make a motion that we approve the Parks and Rec statement with the prior approval marked out, and everything else stays the same.
Pending George's approval and updating the policy on the fence and the website for your policy.
Second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Fine.
I'm sorry. We have 2 yay. Okay.
2 so far.
Is that all opposed? Yeah.
Because the words here by saying exactly as is this, without that, and then we're saying we got a sign, and then we're going to have a George. I'm kind of like, let's just approve. Hey, we want a notification of some sort. Get George to approve something that fits on the sign. I think us, trying to put this whole thing on there is going to defeat some of the purpose. That's all.
To Mike's point, I don't think anybody's working.
And that's
Yeah.
totally true.
The smoking dog, we're certainly don't. All right. All right, so we'll get that to George. He might wordsmith it anyway.
Exactly. You're still up.
Camera proposal.
Guilty. Okay, so you've seen basically the top half of it. The bottom half of it is really after we looked and met the representative of Flock Hammer at the site. We walked the driveway, we walked up to the parking lot, and we described what the issues have been with the break-ins. And his proposal was, because I was thinking we probably would need 3. He said no. He said because the cameras are not really based off facial recognition or things that are based off the vehicle recognition. So he said if you have one slightly, not right at the gate, but slightly up the road a little bit, where it'll be in the sun and solar powered, so we don't have to run hot line to it. And the second one up at the entrance to the parking lot. And what you get then is a difference in timing. The car is only there 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. Likely, you can narrow it down very quickly between this time and this time, when the break-in happened. what the car was that created the issue. That's if you don't already know, based on what Brandon was talking to earlier, that it's on a hot list already. So we may be the ones that get it put on the hot list, right?
And that was the process I wanted Brandon to explain, because I understand if there's a vehicle in a database, flagged for whatever reason, and it's like, oh, this compared to that database, they have sent it to you. But somebody just breaks into a car, there was no alert or anything for any of the vehicles in there, how are these cameras going to help with those break-ins?
Right, so it's sortable, all the data is stored in the cloud for 30 days by the cameras. No additional, what do you want to call it, internet or anything else, connections you need or anything else. That's all involved in that one-time cost. I mean, not one-time, an annual recurring cost, along with the camera and the installation is a first year expense only, $350. So it captures the license plates of the car, or even if it doesn't have a license plate, it can tell to what Mike was pointing out earlier, based on the tail lights and everything else, the type of car, the make, the model, all that type of stuff.
But it doesn't clearly identify who it was, because there's no video to the picture.
So there are pictures.
Other,
There are
For this stuff.
Cars. That's going to be kind of hard to do if you're going to use like facial recognition. I mean, you're going to have to have something close.
I know, I'm just asking, so with this being a tag reader, how does this help in other parts of similar situations?
Okay, I'll give you an example. So the same group going around breaking in park, like Waxhaw, ours, up north of Unionville. So a few weeks back, there was the greenway down in Mill Springs. Waxhaw PD pulled up in there and actually caught the group breaking into a car. So I think it was an SUV. So we could take that information, say like a Ford Explorer. We could create our own hot list. And, if that Ford Explorer comes into the park, we can get an alert. Hey, this vehicle just came into the park. Okay, we can go over there, try to get there quick enough to identify who the driver is. Now, a lot of times these are rental cars, so they've got out-of-state tags. But with that being said, if you can find out who the rental company is, we can go back and say, hey, who rented this car? So you can kind of build the case from there. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a tag. It can be like we know this type of SUV or this type of car was doing a break-in, so we can create our own hot list like Toyota Camry. So if a white Toyota Camry or whatever comes in, we can put that on the hot
But
list.
still, if we have a break-in, and the person says, I got here at 2 and I left at 3, and somewhere between 2 and 3, then you would essentially manually go through that hour of pictures of tags to see who came and went.
It doesn't matter.
I was asking Brandon.
Yeah, that's why
you doing it.
You can, if you have a time frame, you can go in and narrow it down, and if you have a vehicle description, you can look for those type. I mean, it's.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, I parked, and I was stupid. I left my loading gun on the front seat like everybody seems to want to do around here. And I go out, and I'm out on the walking trail somewhere, can't see my car or anything. I get back, it's been broken into. So I have nothing to tell you.
As long as you can give me a starting point when you got to the park and when you got back to your car, we can search.
Yeah.
And then by having 2 cameras,
You can tell.
with the enter and leaving time, if it's been there a short time, that's where you're going to concentrate your efforts.
And these guys are
And
only
it's
taking
it's searchable. Sorry, go ahead.
Lauren, you can ask the database for cars that were only there for 10 minutes.
I just wanted to understand how this is already working for other places where it's been installed.
And with the other places that have been installed, have they been solar? My concern is that a solar powered camera versus one that you plug into an outlet is the longevity of the work. Or we're going to go, hey, look, we really need to see video footage from last Saturday at 3 o'clock. You go to pull it up, and they go, oh, the battery must have been dead.
the way the rep explained it to us, as long as it has minimum 4 hours of sunlight. Well, it's not gonna.
We selected a point of the driveway that isn't going to cause an issue with the solar panel. That's why we didn't put it down by the gate. He said, put it here, you got plenty of sun, you're not going to have a problem.
And as far as the upkeep of the cameras, if the batteries have to be replaced,
It's on the
On this.
Once they provide the pole. If anything happens to the camera or the pole, they come out and fix it. They take care of it. There's no maintenance cost for the town, no storage fees, no nothing. I mean, and it's unlimited storage.
Are the cameras concealed or will I see them whenever I pull up?
I don't, have y'all been by the new Weddington Point, I think up here on Airport Road? Well, if you, and this is a bigger one that they've got, I haven't seen one this big, but I've seen one in Marvin, one of the neighborhoods off Waxhaw Marvin. I mean, the solar panel is very small. I mean, if you're not looking for it, you'll think it's like a street light or something.
If I'm a crook, granted, am I going to notice it whenever I pull
Well,
up?
chances are they're probably not going to be looking. They're looking to get in and what they're going to do, like break into cars and get out. They're not worried about
Okay.
cameras. But the new Weddington Point, they've got the solar panel on that thing is huge.
St. John's Forest.
And St. John's Forest, and I know there's some in Weddington, but they're
One of the neat things about this flock system is kind of like facial ID, but for vehicles. If you know you're looking for a car, Silver Pacifica with a roof rack and a bumper sticker, it won't alert on a regular Silver Pacifica. It'll only alert on a Silver Pacifica with a roof rack and a bumper sticker.
Yeah, you can, the search details, if you want to search by heat, are endless. I mean,
But the only data you can access is 30 days.
Unless you save it, you download it.
Well,
Yeah.
no, it's a different whole, another subject matter I want to talk about. The data protection and the privacy aspect of that. Because I understand if it's in there for 30 days, but now if you have somebody downloading all that data for time immemorial that's out of our hands, it's our camera that's out of our hands, that don't feel right. So, I'm like, I understand the sheriff's department getting access to everything else, but I don't think they should be downloading all the data.
The only people who can access the data are the people you give permission to access it.
Well, I'm thinking about the sheriff's office. I don't think they should download all the data that's captured. I think when they have a problem, absolutely they got the data, they can use it, but.
it's not constantly storing it like permanently. Like,
Well, not the sheriff's department is not downloading the data all the
That's what I'm
time,
not-
period.
no.
No.
Well, you said, oh, you can download it and store
You
it.
can
I'm like,
search it and download what you need.
yes, that's one thing, like you're getting it, but it sounded like, no, we're gonna download all the database. So
You have to have
all
a
of it.
rather large file.
Yes, it would be a lot of data.
I don't want to pay that IT fee.
Well, exactly, I mean, frankly, I'm like,
Agreed.
yeah, you understand where I'm going.
Yep.
I did find my notes. It only needs 3 to 4 hours of south-facing sunlight, and the vendor said they prefer that they're solar powered, not water
So the follow-up, I think this is what what David was going toward. Are these cameras going to be at ground level where I can walk up to them and just spray me over the lens? Or they're going to be up in the air?
12 feet.
12 feet in the air.
All right.
on the 14th.
And they're well, 2 foot concrete and ground.
Right, it's a 14-foot pole, it's only 12 foot above, basically. But, yeah.
It's cemented.
So like we're going to just walk up to it and...
Well, and that's, it can also take pictures like if somebody's walking in the park, it don't have to be in a car. It can
It
be
can
somebody.
do that, yes. It will do that, but it's not primarily based on facial recognition.
Right.
It's based on vehicle recognition.
And according to the vendor, that's not a problem that they have. Like somebody,
Right.
So let me ask Cheryl. Cheryl, from a records-keeping perspective, do we have any issues?
I don't think so, and I just made a note to send you the camera policy that we already have adopted, and maybe we may need to tweak it, but we already do have a policy.
I mean, as the keeper of records for the Village of Weston Chapel, are you okay with the video being kept for 30 days and then just disappearing?
That's what we basically have with the cameras here.
Okay.
I was very impressed. As somebody who was anti-cameras, because I didn't think they were going to do any good.
And they're proven work. I mean, I can't tell you how many instances in St. John's and Indian Trail.
It's a constant Facebook alert, the plot camera and the...
And the notifications are within seconds. So, I mean, that's.
Actually, the word does get out, and then they have fewer break-ins, so newer groups in parks. I have parks and areas, shopping centers, that have been using them. some improvement as well.
Yeah, and when you do your monthly reports, I would like to see the number of camera inquiries that the sheriff's office does for the month. Like, you had 10 alerts, or you had to go search for 4 people.
Oh, okay.
You know, that kind of thing of like, the camera doing something.
So how many alerts do we get?
Yeah, how many alerts you get, or if you have to go search for a person that walked down. You know, if you had to do a manual search or something.
How many buses, more than 15 people?
We could have I don't think we can search by buzzing with prior approval.
Yeah. It's flag in the database, and they're there.
Well, it sounds like it's a positive step regardless. I think the residents of Weston Chapel will feel infinitely safer.
And I will ask that we at least, we put the camera policy on our August agenda, at least so we're all aware of what it says, so make sure we're all.
Now, Cheryl, the big question to you is, what do we have to do to move money around to pay for this if we move forward?
Well, you have fund balance assigned for future park improvements. You could appropriate that money,
How much is in that account?
$30,430.
And how much would we need initially?
5,700.
Yeah.
All right.
That includes
$5,700.
$2,500 a piece and $350 per camera for the installation.
We
Charles,
also,
can you
Just
put
the
here,
annual first fee.
as far as where the money's coming from?
I mean, we've got fund balance set aside from fees in lieu, right?
No, I don't think we can use that money.
Okay.
That's to develop the park.
And you didn't have that money tagged for anything else specific?
but I do think we need to also add in the motion, is it going to be a 1-year contract or 2? They typically do 2 years, but they can do 1 with the municipality.
And that's what I
We
was
just
saying
need to
too.
be-
And he said after a year, if you don't like it, you don't have to re-up.
I need to know once I would pay for it.
What's their history been with keeping consistent yearly rates? Have they been moving up, or have they been fairly consistent?
No, he said it's been consistent.
So there would be an
Because they're
advantage for us to lock
getting-
in for 2 years to start with to protect the rate.
They're getting a ton of business on them.
It takes them 10 to 12 weeks to, once you get on the waiting list, so to speak, to get set up.
And if council votes, I would like Cheryl to reach out to us tomorrow so we can get on the
Get your name in the file.
bus.
Absolutely.
We'll have to
I'll
have,
make a motion to move forward with the clock system, 2 security cameras for Dogwood Park.
In the amount of,
With the amount of the
$5,700.
$5,700 plus any nominal fees for installation.
That includes
That
it.
includes those.
And there you
yearly or
go.
more?
We'll do yearly to start, because I think we'll all still be here in a year. If we decide we want to up that, or renew that, I should say.
and your motion is also including appropriating that money and creating a budget for it. Because we
Yes.
can't spend it until we have a budget. Okay.
I second.
Any further discussion, any other questions?
Yeah, I mean, if we do the 1-year thing, and this is early July, then that would mean we would have to be in a position like next June to approve it. Otherwise, you depend on when the contract starts. If the contract doesn't start really installed in 3 months, then it doesn't matter because we're well into it.
Right.
I'm just saying, if we get in the cycle where we're right at the beginning or end of the fiscal year, then that could be complex, that we don't want to have a gap. But wait 3 months, then it's not an issue.
It's going to be 10 weeks, I think.
Yes. Yeah, we asked that question.
10 with 3 weeks, I think.
14. Actually, I said 10 to 12. 10 to 14 is correct. Sorry.
So at least by September 1st.
We're hoping. We're
Whenever.
hoping. So,
And
yeah.
the picture quality is excellent. It's not like these pixelated, grainy pictures that you see from, Facebook posts and stuff. I mean, the picture is good.
Just one other piece of information, if somewhere along the line, we want to add IP-based cameras, for let's say, if we do put up the multi-use picnic shelter / storage area, bathroom, or put one down by the amphitheater, you can connect through their system in order to
So it's
use
a
this.
standalone.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Without using another flock camera.
But that would be us buying a whole separate
If we
camera
ever wanted to go.
system the data could be exchanged with them essentially.
No.
Is that right? I mean,
No.
their system wouldn't be running it or anything else, they just.
We didn't get that deep into the conversation, but I would imagine I believe that's correct, but we can ask those questions when we get to that.
Does council need to approve who will have access?
Our policy says that.
Yeah.
That's how we review it.
We have plenty of time if you don't have these. We'll have that next discussion in this time next month.
So we have a motion and a
You'll need to
second.
think about, you want to add FBI, federal agencies, because they do put into the SWAT system, like people are looking for nationally, so it'll give an alert if somebody they're after all over the country goes into.
I believe
That
our,
has to be in our contract with them.
and our policy already references law enforcement. So
And we
I think
can-
you're covered.
If y'all approve the cameras, our cameras, like, we can coordinate with other agencies, flock cameras, if they have similar crowds, so it's like we can work with them.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Yeah.
Unanimous?
Yeah.
All right, thank
Thank
you
you.
very
Thank you.
much. Mr. Rath. You have one more thing?
Before you get to that one, I actually had another item I just wanted to bring up. We didn't get to touch base on that, was the drinking fountain discussion, which we decided not to add it to the agenda only because I think the monies have been already appropriated for the expansion of the sprinkler system or.
No,
We put it in
water sewer.
water sewer?
But we were asking, we were still trying, I don't know if you ever got a call back, okay. The mayor was contacting, going back and forth with the county, and the county's going back and forth with the state, and they kept not answering the question. Because we have an email from 2 years ago that essentially says from the county, from someone in the group, I don't remember, I think it did, it doesn't matter. And then, right, part of the county, that in the absence of a sewer system or a septic system, that you can put in a dry well. That was the okay. We're trying to see if that is still okay.
Yes.
And Amanda, the mayor's asked the question a couple of times, they keep coming back, and they're not answering you whether you can have a dry well or not, they're just saying, yes, it needs to connect, they just say, yes, it needs to connect to a sewer system or a septic system. So, that's not clear.
I will follow up with them. It's been long enough, I think I can.
And I apologize for not touching base with you ahead of time, but I wanted to mention again, because I know budget says so. If anything, I don't know if we do get approval, I mean, obviously the fountain's sitting in the hallway there, and we can, because we do know, Amanda did get back from the county that it's at least a 2-year waiting list before any sewer capacity can be added at all.
2 years for the expansion and a 2-year waiting list, so 2 years.
Yeah.
No matter what.
So, if we can do a dry well, makes it faster, but again, if they allow it. So, the state has to. So the county's going back to the state again.
Yeah, I'll follow up again.
No worries. I'm sorry, but I wanted to bring that back.
There is an email.
Oh, there is one now?
I won't name any names until I don't understand the entirety of the circumstance, but a person with Union County stated the drinking fountain may drain into a dry well provided there is no on-site sewer or private waste disposal system.
Want to say that again?
What was the date of this?
That's the
July of 2020.
No, that's the email I'm referencing.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's the original email that everybody, when we originally looked at this, we just said we want to do a dry well. They said, fine. And now, 2 years later, they go, oh, no, you have to tie it into a sewer system. So it's,
Can't you just send an email back and say, I just want to confirm this is still correct?
well, we've already got somebody in the county taking this to the state.
The county this time said no.
Well, that's
And then
fine.
they came back and they said, well, let's ask again. But then they said the state never responds or takes their time to respond, so,
Did they acknowledge this first email?
no.
I don't think that was the state acknowledging, that was just the county acknowledging. Because I actually reached out to the county, the person in charge of this is the county. They said, oh yeah, dry well's fine.
You
It was
forwarded
from
it to
the
me?
code enforcement supervisor.
Yes.
At the county level, 2 years ago.
Well, I'll follow up.
Year and a half.
I have some information.
We just want to make sure we don't put this thing in and then all of a sudden we're done.
Yeah.
COVID, the rules could have changed as well. So, I mean, I'm, you know, I'm not, this is not an argument, it's just give us the right answer.
And then for your final item, I'll appoint
Yes.
Beth Leonard to the Parks and Rec Committee. I said I appoint Beth Leonard
Thank
to
you.
the Parks and Rec Committee.
Is she a resident?
Yes, she lives in Silver Creek, right?
Yeah.
She used to be our.
Yeah, I know who she is. I didn't know she was a resident.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she was a big help with the
Huge.
rock and roller car, the car show.
Two of them. Huge. She did all the awards and the suggestion to differentiate between types of vehicles so that there was a little bit more, yeah,
Diversity.
diversity. That's
Well, that
that's the
driver
way you
license
use word in
is-
America.
Drivers?
Oh, yeah, she used to
Any
drive
more
track
questions?
cars.
Any more questions for Brad? Thank you, Brad, we appreciate your hard work.
Thank you. Committee was all part of it, so thank you.
All right, so that brings us to item 9A of building plot. David, I'll turn it over to you.
I've been approached multiple times by I'm not sure that this person is still a resident, but he or she was at the time that the town hall was being built,
Yeah.
and he or she was on the building committee, and they have asked several times why there's not a plaque commemorating the building committee in our town hall.
We got some papers out there in the cabinets.
There you
They want us to commemorate them, not just a note that says town hall founded or
They want a plaque on the
established.
side of the building with their names on it.
And I'm okay. I'm only bringing this up because I want it to be official in the minutes, so that council has heard the request
Yeah.
and council has acted on the
Yeah.
request.
And I said it
Yeah.
earlier, but
Yeah.
no one, I don't think we serve our community for applause and recognition that we're serving our community. We serve our community to make it and keep it a better place to live, or a great place to live. And we don't need a plaque.
Understood.
They can put it in their,
Yeah.
in their gravestone or their,
I'll have LinkedIn.
on their LinkedIn account. Yeah. Council good with that?
I'm good with that.
I'm good with that. Thank you.
Think about how many plaques we would have around the village if we had to put a plaque anytime somebody does do something.
Yeah, this is not where you participate and get an award place.
No helicopter council purposes.
Understood.
Let's move on.
Participation award.
Participation trophy is what you're looking for.
Yeah.
That's what
Do you have any for?
No.
Okay. All right. So that brings us to item 9, the public hearing, RE zoning map amendment for annex parcel at 1015 Cuthbertson Road. Is anyone sign? I'll open the public hearing. Is anyone here to sign up to speak? I'll close the public hearing, and I'll entertain a motion to approve ordinance 2022-13.
So motion.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous? Welcome to Wesley Chapel, Mr. Ruley.
Oh, that's you?
Who's seconded it?
I hope you can afford those
Dave.
extra taxes.
What's that?
I hope you can afford that extra 0.01 cents.
I think I'll be able to survive.
I don't think he can afford it because he just repainted his driveway.
It's true. Gotta improve the town.
With all that extra income from being on the planning board now. See, I can carry over.
That's right.
Well, we appreciate your patience and
Certainly.
involvement in the village.
Thank you.
Welcome. All right, so now we have a public hearing for special use permit text amendment. I'll open the public hearing. Anybody sign up? I'll close the public hearing. And then I'll entertain a motion for ordinance 2022-13 -12.
You want to talk about it some?
You wanna talk? Bob wants to talk about it, 'cause he worked.
I don't want
You may talk about it.
this one's maybe a little bit more complex than
Sure.
Mr. Ruley's home. I'm sure it's a very nice home.
home.
Very nice home. So beginning several months ago, we started to engage the planning board in a discussion regarding the scope and applicability of special use permits in the zoning ordinance, and worked with them over the course of several months to review the circumstances in which they were required, where they were required, when they were required, and found, among other things, special use permits were required in all manner of circumstances. Right, everything from any use larger than 2,000 square feet in a commercial zoning district to some fairly a learning. So Huntington Learning Center has to get a special use permit to go to an existing. An example is that had to happen at one point in time in the past. And so we really took a holistic look at the entirety of the zoning ordinance and to identify those places where maybe the ordinance went a little bit further than was practical in terms of council administration of the ordinance from the perspective of special use permits and all of the various things that go into that. And came up with a number of, it's really probably, there's probably close to 100 different changes as proposed currently. And it ranges everything from reducing the circumstances or districts in which certain uses require special use permits. For instance, animal kennels as an example, they would remain a special use in the RA 40 district, stay by right in the light industrial district, and would no longer be a permitted use in the B1 and B2 districts, as an example. We're also proposing to consolidate and or split certain types of uses into categories. So, for instance, things like churches and schools would have thresholds at which churches would have thresholds at which they would be permitted in certain districts, and then not permitted in those districts if they were over that size threshold and relegated to, for instance, the O&I or a commercial district. Same thing with schools. They would be O&I district, but not in commercial districts or in residential districts. That would necessitate a legislative act via a rezoning to a narrow circumstance, such as a conditional office institutional district for a new school, versus the ability of an entity to come in and say, here's your application for a special use permit in the R40 district for a new school. And you're bound by all these rules. Instead, it's more like, we have an idea about putting a new school here. What are we going to do? Well, since that property is not zoned properly, you would have to come in and rezone it, which would allow a more orderly process to take place. In reviewing the ordinance, we looked at some uses that were duplicative or vague that all required special use permits in most, if not all, circumstances. Proposing removing some of those are just a little bit too specific. There's things like paintball, airsoft, or laser gun facility.
Only at town hall.
Only at town hall. That would be removed from the use table altogether. Again, modifying where certain uses allow. So things like bed and breakfasts, they would essentially, they're currently a conditional or a special use in basically all the zoning districts. We make them a permitted use but limit their size. There's currently no size limit. So I could come in and ask for a special use permit for a 14-room bed and breakfast. So be adding a definition to bed and breakfast and a condition that they be limited to no more than 4 rooms. Adding in that certain uses would now be prohibited in all zoning districts. just some gaps we saw in the ordinance in terms of, because part of it's not just removing the requirement for special use permits, it's making sure that the uses are aligned to zoning districts and where they're appropriate, so that more things can be permitted by right, and not having these kind of off-the-wall special use permit requirements. So we have to figure out where it's going to go. Solid waste vehicle storage facility. I don't know a circumstance where that would be ever appropriate anywhere in the village of Wesley Chapel. What is currently termed airstrip, changing it to airport, airstrip, heliport, and helistop. I don't see a circumstance where there's really any location inside the village of Wesley Chapel where that would be an appropriate use given the circumstances we're in. Junkyards. Don't need any junkyards in the village of Wesley Chapel. Do what we can with that. And then, in addition to stockyards, slaughterhouses, and rendering plants, probably not a circumstance where that would be appropriate anywhere. So those will, because of a finding the state Supreme Court had in recent years, the need to, if we want to not allow something, we need to be specific in what we're not allowing. So these are things that are kind of in the ordinance now that we allow somewhere with a special use permit. And the proposal the planning board signed off on was recommended to the council was to make those things so they were allowed nowhere, but very specifically still defined, so we're not scrambling when somebody comes in and wants to randomly do one of these things. Then there are 31 additional complementary text amendments that go along with that to various sections of the ordinance, amending everything from the sign sections that require special use permits for certain types of signs, a reference to special use permit process. Again, changes to things like the bed and breakfast to specify that it's for. We added a few definitions. A new use called park, public. There is not a park, public use in your ordinance right now. So we're separating that from outdoor recreation, which is typically what somebody would call generally it's kind of a commercial use. There is one thing that would need to be updated. And that's the legislature actually made this change the governor signed the bill the other day. Originally, private clubs had become private bars a few years ago. They changed the definition in ABC statutes in 18B. And I believe that just became bar as of yesterday or the day before. The word private has been removed from it since they've removed the membership requirement now in the statute. The technical definition is still the same as somebody that has basically a mixed beverage license, but it's no longer a requirement to be. So we would change that to just bar. We proposed changing that to conform to statute, and so now we're proposing again to change that to conform to statute. Telecommunications towers, another hot button kind of issue. The way that it is currently written, and these are all things that are subject to additional discussion, would be to allow them to separate those into two categories as well. So churches, we changed the name of those to religious institutions, and categorize those by size, capacity under 250, capacity 250 and more. Same thing with like telecommunications towers and facilities, split that into a use that would be those that are less than 200 feet in height and those that are greater than 200 feet in height. Those that are 200 feet or less in height would be allowed subject to the current standards, which have requirements for things like setbacks from adjoining properties and things of that nature, would be allowed in all zoning districts, while those that were taller would still require a special use permit and limited to the R80, R60, R840, B1, B2, LI, and OI districts, but no longer allowed in the most taller telecommunications towers over 200 feet would no longer be allowed in any circumstance in the R40 district. So. A number of items of that nature. Schools, again, no longer allowed in all districts. They would be relegated to the O&I district.
That be applicable to any application submitted after we approve this?
Anything that will be submitted after you approve it would fall under, including anything that's in process now.
So even like an appeal of a decision?
That would go under the. Yeah. If somebody wanted to apply again, they could apply under the new.
Okay.
So we we have schools, elementary and junior high, public or private, and we have schools, senior high, public or private. And then we took out the definition for daycare. So where's daycare spot? Where's daycare now?
Daycares still are daycares. Yeah, daycares are still daycares.
And
It's just there was.
Daycare's public or private?
It's daycare. Well, we're taking the ordinance currently discriminates, and that's an accurate assessment of situation between public and private schools. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I think there was some justification in doing that because public schools offered transportation to students. Private schools generally did not. Charter schools exist now, and in some great number, and they do not offer transportation to students. And so any kind of real distinction that existed between public and private schools is essentially gone as a broad classification of things. So one thing, those where it says schools, elementary and junior high, public and private, those are actually two different uses right now, subject to different standards.
So
we would consolidate those into a
secondary, but we're daycares.
Daycares exist there's currently used, I think you noted it, daycare associated with a church.
They did the definition of associated with place of worship.
Taking that out, and then there's still a use called daycare. Use called daycare center. A place where daytime care is provided to 6 or more children, etc. And those daycare center would become allowed as a use by right in the OI, B1 and B2
and
districts.
Is a preschool or pre-K considered a daycare?
It probably would be. I don't think we even have anything in the ordinance
Do we need something
about preschool
or pre-K
I think there's no.
as being included with daycare?
Generally, unless they are constituted under a public education system, preschools are whatever you want them to be. My understanding.
I don't want anybody starting a new preschool. Right? So I come in here and I look at this.
Sure.
And they're like, it's a preschool, it's not a daycare, it's a preschool. What do we do?
We would say that they're daycares. The word preschool doesn't exist in any form. Elementary, it's a privately owned or publicly owned elementary and secondary schools that actually fall under that definition. So it'd be allowed in the OI district, or B1 and B2, or actually just the OI district. If somebody decided to call it a preschool and not a daycare, then it would go in the O and I district.
But a daycare would be OI, B1 or B2.
And B2, yeah.
I'll be happy to see somebody just decide maybe a preschool or pre-K program for.
So an existing preschool or daycare center in a residential district would become legally non-conforming. And if it wanted to be expanded, then it could go through the rezoning process. And that goes for anybody that's not in the district that allows it. So I don't know how many other churches would fall in that category that might have that as a pre-existing permitted use. I think there's probably one other at least, but I believe that they're in a commercial zoning district that would allow it. I don't know that for sure.
Are schools currently a use by right in OI?
Are schools currently used by right? I don't. Schools, the ones that are called public are in every zoning district.
But the private ones are not.
But the private ones are not. I think that's a problem. what is being proposed is that schools would become schools, regardless of what stripe they might be colored, and be allowed as a use by right in the O&I district. And
But that's how you're recommending the change.
that is my recommendation. That schools go in the O&I district, because they don't need to go in a commercial district, because that's for commerce, right?
Public or private?
Public or private.
Would we have a leg to stand on if Union County Public Schools came in and said there's a 60-acre piece of property that we need to build
All day.
a high school? Really?
Yeah, they have the property.
Now, the legislature, the last legislative session, the legislature was going to say that every local government had to allow a school anywhere
Wherever they
it
want.
wanted to go. That wasn't very popular. If they were going to do that, then you have the inherent authority to regulate the use of land within your jurisdiction.
But if they acquire the property and it's zoned and not OI, they could seek rezoning.
Yeah, and there's something.
They're not going to listen.
There's something kind of strange. I don't know the origins of it particularly.
We don't need traffic flow.
Yes, there's something in your ordinance now that we don't. There's some. You came to somebody. You collectively, the council, came to an agreement with the Union County Public Schools some number of years ago. Let's see if I can find a year on here. That basically said that we're not going to make you, Union County Public Schools, get especially in 2000, not get a special use permit to build a school. Didn't say you couldn't tell them which districts. You just wouldn't make them get a special use permit. Now you can probably, since it's a legislative act, you can change that completely and say you have to get a special use permit to do anything. But you can specify the districts in which such are permitted. So I'm trying to think: has there a new public school has not been built inside of the village of Wesley Chapel since the village incorporated? There have been some alterations, maybe, and some additions of mobile class, but there has not been the construction of a new school in the village of Wesley Chapel by Union County Public Schools.
What about Newtown Elementary?
Was it new? Is it new?
Yeah.
Is it new?
Yeah.
I'm just asking a question.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was.
In-Pace School is adding additional modular classrooms to be permitted.
We allow up to 6, and that is per whatever kind of agreement was arrived at that time.
Okay, so I was asking today.
Yeah. There are 2 going in behind Wesley Chapel Elementary.
So that'll make,
They're
that'll make
5. Right. Yeah.
But they don't need a.
They don't have to do anything. They are permitted to do
I just
that
signed
per
it.
the ordinance. It's probably shaky a little bit in terms of how it was ordained, but it kind of is what it is at the moment.
They'll be probably coming back with more.
They can have one more,
Here, one more.
and then we can talk about where to go from there. But
So would this allow a large church in an OI district by right?
this would. Is that a religious institution? Maximum assembly? Yes.
So, thank you, Mom. This is a great deal of work. I imagine this took a lot of time to get through. I thought this was really good. So, you're ready.
Yeah, one of the things we have to be mindful of when dealing with things like churches is that we have to treat them equitably with other places where people gather for non-religious purposes, including things like town hall or other things. They have to, NCDOT will theoretically make anybody that wants to get a driveway permit take certain actions before they.
But the school won't have to pay for it.
But schools will not have to pay for anything. They can, but they also will not get to do what they want to do until it's paid for, generally speaking.
But we don't foresee us being inconsistent on anything based on our current situation or knowledge. We think. It's like town hall picture.
Yeah, what we would, so, I mean, kind of the future landscape of use regulation that this would usher in, and, you know, and while you're thinking about it, think, you know, in the interest of making sure that everybody's on the same page, think about Arbor Brook, right? The church, school jointly rezoned their property to O&I. They would generally be permitted to do what they want to do without further real intervention by the council in that circumstance, if this passes. I've had them going through the same parallel process as if they're going to have to if they're going to do a conditional rezoning this whole time. I've told them there's no guarantee what might come out the other side of this. So they're still proceeding in that manner until such time the ordinance is changed. If it is changed, they will continue down that path. So that's, you know, the reality would be that certain things that would involve a great deal of scrutiny today would no longer have that same degree of legislative / quasi-judicial scrutiny in the future, and it would be up to the council, planning board, etc., to ensure that property was zoned in a manner in the village that was appropriate for its capacity to handle the types of land uses that are permitted in that district on a general basis instead of a specific basis with a particular use.
It makes my chest less tight already, knowing that we won't constantly be, you know, we thought the SUP process was the way to go. It's really not. So it'd be so nice to have this in place.
It takes out a lot of the arbitrariness that seems to come along of like, oh, we read it this way or that way, and less control. And really, what we want is that ability to work with people to do the right thing for the village.
So, yeah, so we think back to the settled case now of the cell tower, right? I think it would have just been able really to have been built without any, and people would have been mad about that. But I guess they're still going to be mad now. But so it's definitely a different direction from what I understand the village has really ever done in terms of land use regulation. It puts more of an onus on, I mean, whoever's sitting here gets 99% of the blame for anything that somebody doesn't like.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah. I'm expendable.
So are we.
Yeah, but if there's a political need to get rid of me, then it's easy. That's where I get the big bucks.
So do I have a motion?
We don't really have this in the form of an ordinance.
Yeah, Cheryl reminded me it really needs to be in the form of this was more of a discussion to explain what was going on. I have been working on one. It's taking me more time to get it in actual ordinance format than I thought it would, because it's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's over 100 separate changes, and you know it took us a long time with the 160D stuff. With Bridget and I both working on it, took us forever to get all that stuff ready to go. So I can continue if the sense of the council is that you would like to proceed with this, then we'll put it in ordinance format and get it to you. Now, having held a public hearing on the summary of what is proposed, then an ordinance could be adopted at a later date.
That sounds good.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Vaughn. I know that was a lot of work.
It was interesting.
Any more questions for Vaughn? That brings us to the update on the dam engineering RFQ. Friday at 2 p.m. was our deadline. We did receive 4 RFQ packets. David, myself, Brad, and Cheryl reviewed them prior to this meeting. we have a question for George, and then we have a few questions for our top applicants to help us finish our ranking system, and then we'll either have to wait for August or we'll have to call a special meeting. And in light of pressure from the state, I would probably like to call a special meeting to ask council to approve our number one ranked RFP.
Can you share with us any of the details?
You can read them if you want. I don't think that I really am supposed to talk about it until we've asked the questions of the people. Like tell you who and why. So, but once we have asked the questions, and that kind of helps us finish our ranking, then we can share.
So you'll come to us with an objective ranking, as objective as a subjective ranking can be, of the 4 providers with a recommendation of which one. Is that
Right.
what
That's my understanding.
Okay.
And then we'll tell you why and ask for your approval to move forward.
That's fine.
And Cheryl did remind us that with Town Hall, you didn't even go with the first RFP or even the second one because you're negotiating with prices and stuff. And we do expect the dam remediation, the analysis, the geotechnical analysis report, all that on Tuesday, tomorrow, hopefully.
Right.
So if we call a special meeting, you might get a request in the next couple of weeks.
It'll be short meetings, so it's fine.
Then that brings us to the update on the comprehensive plan steering committee.
All right. So I guess a few weeks ago, I sent the most recent draft of the comprehensive plan to the planning board and the council simultaneously. Some of you have had more involvement with it on our steering committee. Thank you to those who did that. So just to remind everyone, the purpose of the plan is really to help guide policies over the next decade related to land use and development, capital investments the village might make, that others might make outside agencies. Really how to manage growth and really all aspects of running the village of Wesley Chapel for the benefit of its residents. So it has there's a vision along with a set of guiding principles that underlie that vision, and then a set of recommendations related to each one of those guiding principles. How do we move forward with this plan? The planning process really began back in 2020 with the online community survey. You all recall the presentations we made about that. We took that information to really serve as an underlying basis as we began engaging with the community in more detail. So last September 2021, we kind of kicked off the additional public-facing process after having engaged with the steering committee for a couple months. We did community conversations, had about 50 people that came through here and helped us verify some of the survey results and help point us in the right direction on really getting the plan moving. Brought that information back to the steering committee along with the survey results and began working on the vision and guiding principles. The other public component of the process, we had a drop-in meeting here back in June as well. So we've had several opportunities for the public to participate in the process, and then they will have another opportunity next month at the public hearing on the comprehensive plan. And it's been out there. I believe Cheryl sent out an email to everyone back when the first draft was done. I guess we can probably send out another email in preparation for the comprehensive plan. Any changes that might arise from your review, there have been several updates along the way during the process. When we've in addition to the initial public engagement we did with the community conversations after the steering committee had been formed, we did a background assessment of Village. Looked at a number of different topics, including demographics, population change, the economy, housing, transportation, the environment, land use and development patterns, community services. Basically put together a compendium of information regarding Wesley Chapel, so we had a good understanding of where the community is today, where it was in the past, so that we could chart a good path forward for its future. After reviewing all that information, taking the public's input into account, and working with the steering committee for a while, we developed that initial vision, revised it a few times with the steering committee, and came up with a vision statement that goes. The name of the planning process was Village Vision 2050. So the real purpose was to chart a course for the future of the community. I'll just go ahead and read it out loud here real quickly. This is input from everybody really reflected in here. And so the Village of Wesley Chapel is an exceptional residential community that is deeply rooted in its rural legacy. With quiet neighborhoods and abundant opportunities for recreation, learning, and engaging with friends new and old, our tight-knit community is a great place to live and raise a family. We celebrate our natural and cultural heritage while fostering responsible and sustainable growth that is compatible with our rural character. As we grow, we remain committed to protecting our valuable natural resources, seeking improvement to our vital infrastructure, and building a community that makes everyone proud to be a resident of Wesley Chapel. I thought that captured it very well. It's a little wordy, but I think it reflects the feelings of the community as a whole.
As long as it doesn't
No, I want to see that on a plaque on the playground.
Subject to prior approval. As I mentioned previously, there's some guiding principles that support that vision. Basically, here are the bullet point versions of those. They're supported by, explained a little bit more in a statement in a sentence or two that come along with each of these. And then there's, again, some recommendations that go along with them. And there's things that were talked about here tonight. The public safety aspect, coordinating with the Sheriff's Department, talking about having more events at the park and things like that. Those are all things that are reflected in the recommendations of the plan. So the guiding principles, in no particular order really, but ensuring compatible residential development, limiting commercial sprawl, building strong infrastructure, respecting the natural environment, maintaining a safe community, having a strong and cohesive identity, being an active and healthy community, having robust civic engagement, maintaining regional partnerships, and maintaining an efficient and responsive government. So those are the things that are kind of underlying that vision statement that are directing us where to go in terms of the actions that the village takes to implement the plan. Along with that, that's the kind of broader policy component. That's also supported by a new future land use map that we worked several months on with the steering committee. That future land use map moves in a little bit of a different direction in terms of nomenclature and underlying theory from the previously adopted future land use map, which was very specific. It basically translated directly into zoning. We have policy statements about density and about the nature of conservation development and concentrating commercial development and things of that nature. This is more of a growth policy map where we expect to see growth, what we want to protect in the face of growth, where we do not want to grow and maybe do not want others to grow. We've moved outside of the village limits with this future land use map. The currently adopted future land use map was constrained to the village limits proper at the time that it was adopted. And so when somebody, like this gentleman here, wants to annex into the town, we kind of bend ourselves in a little bit of a twist trying to make a recommendation on policy statement. There's nothing that specifically says what his property should be zoned. And there's no future land use category because it's not reflected on the map. But so we look to what's around it. And there's certain circumstances where you may not have anything around it when somebody wants to be annexed and rezoned. And so it makes it very difficult to really look outside yourself. So we've gone outside the village. We've taken those areas. Then we had Bjorn Hansen from the county also participate on the steering committee to help us internalize some of the county's policies in terms of land use. We've taken those areas, those transition zones, and assigned our future land use categories to them. Those that are kind of surrounded by the village now. We've also looked to the east, going out towards Rocky River Road, Airport Road, those areas that are currently in the county. and establish land use policy that we think that those areas should stay rural, that the village does not want to sprawl to the east. So the village will not sprawl to the east. Union County still may, but I think you have a good, solid policy position if something big is coming out that way that you can point to. So Union County's future land use map might say one thing. Well, the Village of Wesley Chapel's map says maybe another thing now, and it's something that you can talk to county planning commission members or county commissioners, or if somebody comes in and calls me or Cheryl or whomever, the mayor, on the phone and says, hey, I want to annex this 100 acres out here east on 84 in town. You say, well, it says that we're not interested in growing that direction, so thank you so much for calling us. We wish you luck in your future endeavors. Maybe look somewhere else. But we've also taken the approach of identifying areas where we expect to see growth in town. We've designated future neighborhood kind of a residential growth classification on the future land use map. These are the parcels that are really ripe for development. They're larger in size. They probably have access to water and sewer really close by, and so that's as I've explained to several people, the village welcomes growth within the context of of the current regulations. We're satisfied with what the density is and the standards, and so if you'd like to develop in that manner, please do come in. So this is what this map tries to perpetuate, also recognizing that there are things, we have an existing neighborhood, future land use classification. We know what needs to be protected from encroachment by incompatible uses, and we've added something to the future land use map that's village residential, essentially. These are the kind of scattered 3 to 5 to 7 acre parcels kind of scattered around some of your main roads that are really not going to develop into cohesive new subdivisions, or would be very unlikely to. And what the trend has been for those to be subdivided into little acre lots, one after the other, every 120 feet, another driveway, which really detracts from the function of the roads and detracts from the character of the village. And so right now as a policy statement, it hasn't been translated into ordinance. That's something to maybe look at in the future. The policy is saying that we would prefer to not have small, repetitive subdivisions going down every road and taking up every last piece of land. Those 3 to 5 acre parcels are great, and they should probably stay just about the way they are. Maybe cut that 5 acres in 2, maybe leave that 3 acres alone, or build a road, or have an actual road and develop off of it. Don't use 84 or Newtown Road or Potter Road or Wesley Chapel Indian Trail or any of those other roads as your driveway or your internal subdivision street. Town Center reiterated its constraint to this area, which in our meeting with the shopping center folks, they were excited that we were not going to be sprawling down 84 with new commercial development. So, I think it's a good plan. I think it's reflective of what this community wants, and that's the most important. You need to get what you want. And I think we have a potential to have a plan adopted now that will, for the next 10, 20 years. Hopefully it'll be updated more sooner than that, but I think it will serve the village well moving forward.
So next steps are for the planning board to approve it.
To make a recommendation.
Okay.
And
For you to have a public hearing.
we need to, so I call for the public hearing, right?
Sure.
Or does the council call here? It's too late now for my brain. Do I call or council?
I think either one of you can.
Yeah.
Sometimes even staff does.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so I'll call for a public hearing at our next regularly scheduled council meeting, the second Tuesday. Monday of I'm very happy with the plan. I think Bob did a great job. Bob and Bridget did a great job with that. And getting community input.
And how many people dropped in? I don't think I heard the number.
To 50.
Well, we had the community conversations. We had 50, but they were so happy.
They were so happy. How many was it?
I don't recall.
I think was it one prejudice Mandarin. I think I won the bet.
We had a great time talking with everybody that came.
Yep. Very valuable citizens came that day. Came there.
They're all very informed now.
Yeah. It's quality, not quantity.
That's right.
Okay, so we look forward to the planning board's response, and yep.
Thank you for all the work.
It's been fun.
And if there is no negative feedback from the public hearing, can we adopt it?
You can adopt it that evening by resolution. It's there. Before the last several years, it was unclear whether a plan had to be adopted after a public hearing, but it's taken on more of a. It's still not regulatory in nature, but it has become a component of your legislative regulating function, and so it has been at least recommended that land use plans of this nature be adopted following the same kind of notification and public hearing process, and then formally adopted by resolution. I can share one that I have.
What?
And then you'll need the plaque for it.
And the plaque for it, yeah. And the Hall of Honor.
Well, thank you, Vaughn. We really appreciate your hard work.
Thank you.
Too. That leads us to item 14A, website proposal. So Lori and Cheryl and I did meet with GoGov, who is our current website provider, and basically, while a lower upfront cost to go with GoGov, correct me if I'm saying this wrong. So while a lower upfront cost going with GoGov, it's a higher yearly fee versus the company Lori talked to. It was a higher upfront fee, but a lower annual fee. It's still probably in the $15,000 ballpark range. There's $10,000 in the budget, right, Cheryl?
I think so.
I continue to get complaints about the website. Lori and I would like to ask that. I don't know the right process, but to figure out exactly what we need, if there is a bidding process or a process that we can do to find out exactly what we need and exactly what it will cost. And I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I think we need to do an RFP, but we also have to have additional questions with it. This is not, to me, this is not an RFP. Hey, just give us a website, we're going to like it. No, I want to be able to have objective criteria, additional questions they have to answer so we can consider the totality of it, not just which site we like best. Because I think there's implications, long-term, short-term costs, long-term costs, the ability to refresh, and other aspects to it that we want to be able to ask additional questions, not just say, we want your opinion, like sometimes.
And we know this isn't a quick thing, so hopefully we'll have some numbers on the dam before having numbers on a website in case we did want to include it.
So in my limited knowledge about this, I would think that there would be a sort of a template we could just buy and drop in our information. Is that not the case?
Well, basically that's GoGov.
Yeah.
That's not what you want, because then you just look like everybody else and you don't stand out. There's nothing that you want the personalization. And yes, they allow you, these pictures or some other stuff, but it's also, we want somebody that's going to be able to come in and work with us and help consult with us and help guide us on it. And yes, the functions of towns are pretty similar, but I think that you don't want to, this is not something you want to get up with. This is our representation of ourselves in the public.
Right, but if there's a pre-done template that we could drop our information into, would it be better than what we have now?
It is better than what we have now, and don't know that it's any more cost
Yeah, and taking the content from one website to another isn't as easy as it sounds. There's going to have to be some rewriting and rework of moving content from one thing to another. And, you know, we've talked to 2 companies. There's a third one, I can't remember the name right now, that other towns and others have used. So we know there's at least 3 people we can go and get some quotes from about it. So I just think we should, you know, go out for RFPs to at least 3 companies and ask some specific questions so we can compare some of the things we want to do, you know, and then go from there. But you are either going to do a 4-year contract for $5,000 the first year, $45,000 each year after that, or you're going to pay up to $15,000 the first year and a few hundred each year after for hosting and maintenance. So it comes out to about the same. Well, we don't know what the third one is.
How many hits are we on average per month?
Do we track that?
Cheryl can look it up.
I can look it up.
One of the things that was very disconcerting with GoGov, when we talked to them, is he knew nothing. He really didn't know us. They've never tried to work with us or install us to refresh our sites or anything else. And when we asked about what data was collected, he gave us the information. And Cheryl had to say, no, I have this. And he was like, no, you have to use Google Analytics, which is a standard industry thing to use, and no, not very difficult to set up or anything. But he was totally not there and very reticent about any type of roadmap or technology. It's just things coming.
He was surprised we still had the sunshine list, so he just said that well away.
In all fairness, when I get calls all the time for all kinds of things, and if people call me, and if it's not something that we've said we wanted to do, I just tell them we're not interested, and I have told him before, you know, nothing's budgeted to do, so don't waste my time and yours. You know.
Anyway, I would just like us to go forward with an RFP.
That makes sense.
And if we don't like it,
Yeah, it's just an RFP, it's just information.
so if you're okay with that, we will work on it.
Just a suggestion, have you thought about reaching out to the community? Because I know there are website professionals for major international corporations live all over this village. Have you thought about maybe getting a website committee?
Well, you also have to then think about where it would be hosted and does it meet the government standards for data privacy collection and yada, 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 which these companies that do municipal and government ones have already covered off. So it removes us from having to do that type of assessment certification review.
Do you feel like that we're better served to have the communications committee ride this horse as opposed to taking up y'all's time and having them do some of the legwork ahead of time? Okay. Okay.
They can certainly give feedback, but no, I would like us to council's ultimately making the decision.
Understood.
Yeah,
But it sounds like that there's going to be a lot of filtering and a lot of direction put in to put together an RFQ. Would the communications committee not be better served to do that?
I'm just being nice. My mama said, can't say so.
My issue is this, I mean, we're not a big municipality. Our paid staff consists of Cheryl, Amy, and John, councilman. I
I'm not
expect to see a web page that just says, here's your council staff, here's your paid staff, here's here's how to go to different places. There's one for parks, and it's not overly complicated. We're not that big a town. It should be fairly straightforward to do. If there are cookie cutter templates that we can use,
If you want to be a cookie cutter town, you can be, but I think that there's an opportunity for us with a brand new comp plan and commission and who we are to make sure we're able to get that out there for the public.
We know how much the cookie cutter plan costs. What we're asking is for the ability to get some prices from official prices from not.
Some information so we can compare.
I mean, we have an official quote from GoGo.
I don't know how complicated our web page can be, given how big we are.
Well, there's a lot of content that goes into a website. And so one of the things that would be a big plus for us is that ability to have a sub-website for the park that's not just a tab, but it could be a more independent site. These new capabilities would allow us to delegate some ability for editing as opposed to publishing, to do some things differently than what we've done. They are also, the technology is much simpler now to where, like the first gentleman I talked to says, if you can type in Word and use Word regularly, you can use these websites as an administrator. So that's something that's very different now than it used to be. It will also be what are the integrations that they already have set up. So one of them already has standard integrations with Facebook and Twitter, one of them doesn't. So that you aren't duplicating effort, that you can push out the same things in multiple channels.
And we will have to eventually, when the sunshine list goes away, we're going to have to figure out what we're going to do to get residents. Like, you can't let GoGov, for $5,000 a year, you can't. And it's expensive wherever you go, but they would do what? Like, you could sign up for emails or texting or
Right. And there will be other things that we're going to need regardless of who we go to. There may be some differences or changes we need with the email client in order to use the distribution list and the things and create some sort of resident database. We're always saying we're the subdivision and the HOAs and other stuff. It gives us an opportunity to create some of that. And I think that these vendors should be in a position to help consult on that to help us maximize, what we get back from use of the site.
So do you have your okay then?
Who are we trying to sell ourselves to?
I think the audience is, if I were looking to buy a house in Wesley Chapel, I'm going to go to the town website and look at it. And that's going to inform my opinion of this town and whether I want to live here or not. Right? So I think it's that aspect of new residents coming into the village and what they see. It's also for businesses and residents that are here that are starting a business or whatever. They say we're located in Wesley Chapel and promote it. It gets us out there. And the other thing is, we are one of the wealthier towns in parts of North Carolina, and we should reflect that.
Well, more information about it, boards and committees. We're trying to actively recruit people to fill some of these things. And can't even go to our website and read about it without.
And see, for example, like the ordinances are just PDF posted to the website, and they're not useful. In my opinion, they're awful, right? But that's a whole other thing of working with an integration with American Legal of how we can then have our ordinances and then presented in a different manner so it's more useful, whether that's for staff or developers or residents to be able to directly find what they want. So there's other ways that you're setting yourself up to continuously improve it, of the way we get information out there. You shouldn't have to be a hunt and peck. We don't have search capabilities. You can get much better search capabilities now.
We can do that overnight. Do you want me to contact our codification company to get it online, the ordinances?
But how much was it? I think that was why we didn't do it, right? Wasn't it rather expensive?
There's only 2 or 3 companies, and the prices are pretty similar. When we codified, it was very similar. But I can check and see.
But that's one of those things that we're like, oh yeah, if I'm a resident, what are the things I want to look at? It also sets us up where now I want to look at forms, I want to look at minutes from meetings, I want to add other things. But once we can get to this point of upgrading technology in here, we can live stream and have recordings of our meetings. It comes from the website, and you're doing it all together. And now residents can be more engaged with the village.
are you okay if we work on an RFP for getting more information about accurate price and potential of what's out there? Right.
I'll do that.
All right, that leads us to Western Union Municipal Alliance update. I do have a question for council. So we did pass a resolution in support of Marvin not wanting the RV parking lot in one of their donut holes.
We in Wilson Chapel Council?
No, in the consent agenda.
Okay.
So Bjorn did present on the 2050 plan implementation committee. There are 6 issues they had committees: broadband, cluster standards in rural areas where water and sewer are present, litter, open space in rural areas, school siting, and stormwater. I was pleasantly happy with everything I heard. For once, I didn't leave the county presentation very upset and frustrated. I feel like they're paying attention to stuff that we've said for years has been a problem.
So those 6 things are now on their way to being implemented, or the Board of Commissioners still have to vote on
The
them?
Board of Commissioners. So they will get this presentation in sometime. I think it's going to planning board. It went to planning board tonight, I think, or this week, and then it will go to the county sometime in August. It will be interesting what happens in the fall in the elections, but I don't know if everybody's heard, but Stony Rushing has been diagnosed with leukemia. So
Talked to his dad today.
I don't know how
He did
that,
not have a good 4th of July.
I don't know how that will impact his political aspirations, because that sounds tough. But they did, okay, so Weddington is going full speed ahead with ETJ. They presented letters from Marshall and and another town. Monroe. So
Wingate?
Marshall and Monroe were given their ETJ from the state. So Weddington, the letters are here. You disagree?
Oh, no, that's interesting.
Yeah. So this says in November 2006, Wesley Chapel, Marvin, and Stallings all requested ETJ from the Board of County Commissioners. Marvin was denied. Wesley Chapel was approved minus 2 parcels that were included in their initial request, but that was repealed at the December BOCC meeting. And action for Stallings was deferred until the December 2006 meeting, but there's no record it was addressed in any meeting in the 6 months that follows. Monroe was granted ETJ extension for parcels around the airport in 2003, but haven't had ETJ since the late 1990s. It appears that Marshall and Wingate appealed directly to the state for ETJ. Marshall included a copy of a draft letter written to a representative and copies of the resolution and letters to residents. And Wingate gave them a copy of the session law granting them ETJ. So they're here. You want to see it?
Oh, no, I'm going to go. That's
So
interesting.
what, I mean, Weddington, Marvin, Stallings wasn't there, but Weddington, Marvin, and Mineral Springs are gung-ho about going to the county commissioners and saying, look, we appreciate that you put transition zones on your map, but we really like ETJ. And if they say no, they want to go to the state level.
Who did you say? Mineral Springs, Weddington?
Springs,
Marvin.
and
Weddington.
Weddington. I don't know about Stallings because they weren't there. Although Stallings was very excited about this in the past. So
I'm surprised about Weddington doing this. Was it like a unanimous thing?
Weddington is like full speed ahead.
No pushback.
I
Wow.
don't think so. Greg Horn was there too while they were talking about this. So their plans are in August to put some words on paper that they want to bring back to our councils for buy-in, and then pending how everybody's councils vote in September, present that to the Board of County Commissioners. I have maintained that Wesley Chapel might just sit back and watch, but just maybe expect some wording that they want us to look at and
Well,
maybe make a statement.
what's the feedback, if any, from planning board? Do they even know about this?
I have given planning board update. I haven't given this one. This is like the first official. They are like going for it.
I would like to keep planning board involved in this and give them the opportunity to give feedback in this and make sure that they know the pros and cons of both sides.
Yeah, and we had the law, the School of Government guy came and talked about ETJ with us, with WUMA. So I have already told them that I thought we would probably sit back and watch, and if they got it, then we would maybe consider it, but.
I think you would find that the planning board's going to be fairly polarized. Would you agree with that, Ron?
I don't know I have no sense of what. It's a brand new, yeah. I mean, I don't have a very good sense of what they would. I think most of them would be very confused by ETJ in general.
Well, I was going to say they need to know both sides, the pros and cons of ETJ and what it means for them specifically. Once they know the details, they may not be as happy with it as, you can wrap it up pretty and put it in a nice box, but that doesn't mean you're going to like it when you open it.
So well, educate me. How would ETJ provide any differences to what we are asking for in the comp plan? Because basically,
it would go from your future land use map as applied outside of the village would move from theory to reality, really. I mean, it would be an implemented policy at that point if you adopted regulations consistent with the plan. The thing that I would be most concerned about in Western Union County right now going in and even getting ETJ granted by our friends in the legislature would be that it might be short-lived. Things are very volatile. And a whipsaw land use policy back and forth, as you've probably experienced a little bit of over the years, isn't really conducive to the best outcomes in all circumstances. Where I have seen ETJ, having 15 different neighbors, it doesn't always work out the best because you still it's just a greater amount of different land use policies clashing together in different ways. In places where you really are growing into actual, it's the country and ain't nobody can build anything there because there ain't any sewer, and being able to have orderly growth, the city progressing out, making plans, installing infrastructure, zoning things the proper way, and it gets annexed in, etc. It works very well in those circumstances where there's competition, as there is here between certain communities. It might not work out as well.
And it could play out in a couple ways, right? Like, we could be asked to make a statement to support our fellow WUMA members as they pursue it, and then it might make us look good to the county because we can say.
But there needs to be a little asterisk to say that doesn't mean just because we support Weddington and Marvin and Stallings or whoever, doesn't mean that we're going to do it.
Right. But and it might win us some favor with the county if they do move forward. If they move forward those transition zones as they have planned.
Yeah, I'd rather see how that plays out first.
Right. But our neighbors, especially Weddington and Marvin, are not waiting. They're going to go to the county and ask for ETJ. If they say no, they are going to the state.
And there was a recent article in the Charlotte Observer about a community near Lake Wylie that's part of the ETJ. Did you see that?
Which in South Carolina or
North Carolina? It's part of.
Oh, Steel Creek.
It's part of Mecklenburg
Yeah.
County, and then there is a dead-end road that somehow got a fire department approved to put on it. And because it got rezoned at some point, and none of the residents knew anything about it, and it just, to me, my takeaway was it was a much greater obligation of indirect stakeholders almost,
Yeah.
of
But-
how to make the decisions and the input and communications.
Mecklenburg County is kind of unique. The city of Charlotte has zoning authority over everything that's not incorporated, basically. So it's basically everything that's left. So it's just kind of a weird circumstance.
But you have a group of residents that thinking,
Yeah,
that have a risk, but then they think, one of the complaints was about, they couldn't even get anybody into the city to talk to them.
Right, because they're not constituents of any of the city council
Yeah, so we
members.
feel fair about
The way that the planning board and the zone is, everything's very weird in Charlotte with how everything works. But yeah, if you're in the county and you're worried about what's going on in Charlotte, you're probably not going to get a city council member to talk to you.
And if for some reason our neighbors did get granted ETJ, we probably wouldn't be too upset with what Weddington or Marvin put on the border, We'd probably be okay with it. But
Yeah, Black Hawk, I don't think it's
for sure. And who knows what they're doing.
The other thing, when we tried to get ETJ, when we got it for a very short time, you have to have public hearings, and people were madder than a hatter at the idea that a town had the nerve. They didn't want to annex into our town, but our town wanted to put controls over them, and that was a 3 a.m. multi-night
It's not
meeting.
like, why not just do involuntary annexation instead of ETJ and just say.
Well, they don't want to be in our town.
They don't want anything to do.
They don't want
Right, that's what
to.
I'm saying, is like, they don't want to do that.
And Marvin wants to close their donut holes because they're starting to take over all their roads. And so they want some additional taxpayer money to help pay for the roads. But
Well, I would think the county commissioners would actually want those donut holes closed because it makes it easier on them.
It
But some
can't.
of them are just like, I don't want to give up anything. As long as I've got control of it, I don't want to give it up. And that was the battle we tried to fight for years with them. And now they're realizing it's not worth it to keep this control.
I mean, if they go forward with that transition zone, I think we'll be very happy. But is it possible just to get a map of our unincorporated areas in and around us?
And we already have that.
Like
It's in the-
updated. It's in the
It's in the plan, man.
Yeah.
Can I get you to just email me that specific map? I don't want to email it off to them.
Like I said, if you had your own water and sewer system, then having ETJ, if you don't,
Just knowing that our neighbors, they're going full speed ahead.
I have no problem sitting on the sideline.
Well, I thought it was going to be a productive adventure, but I don't think it is. But that's really all. Council comments, single family.
Just reminded as I look at the big seal behind the mayor's head, we were almost to the July 15th, 24th anniversary of Wesley Chapel. And I've only been around for less than half that. But I remember when we used to meet over in the church over off of John Street.
Shamwood.
Yeah, over in Shamwood. Since I've come on, we've opened the park, we've opened the town hall, we've done all this without ever going into the red. We've only stayed in the black. I think we, as a community, have done a great job keeping up to our slogan of a great place to live and raise a family. So I'm awful proud that we're coming up on our 24th anniversary of Wesley Chapel and what we've accomplished in such a short period of time. And with sometimes on a shoestring budget. I look at John and he goes, yeah, sometimes it was just John out there with their own personal tools and work weed whackers and leaf blowers, doing stuff. And,
FYI, y'all aren't in that plot.
well, we already have a plaque. No. What she doesn't know is we've already got one on the side of the shipping container. You just haven't seen it yet. We're gonna send it to the bill next week. And there was another issue I was gonna bring up, but since Deb is not here, I'll hold off until next month's meeting.
Oh, God, Jesus.
And it's not fair. I spoke with Paul about it a little bit, but it's just something that I need help out with Deb. I'll give you a teaser that we had this issue with the property on Cottonwood Circle at our last council meeting, and Deb was very adamant about this guy being a disabled vet and blah, blah, blah. And I think as council members, we're here to represent the residents on either side of this guy or across the street from this guy. If what would we do as a council member if that guy lived next door to us? So I appreciate Deb's position, but I think it needs to be addressed. So
Thank you. Next.
I would just like to say how nice it is to ride down a nice, smooth 80.
we've been trying to get the potholes right here in front of the little farmhouse for how many years, Cheryl? 8? Just this little section, just past
Well, think about how many times you're going to drive through that roundabout when it's done for fun.
Just round and round.
Anything else?
Yeah, that's up.
Sunday, I was interviewed by Mitchell's Mayors. He's this guy, young guy, who is trying to interview all the mayors of North Carolina. He's writing a book. He's writing a book.
Did you remind him that at one point you were one of the most influential people, ladies in Union County?
No, I don't seek out the flag.
Cheryl canceled that black.
No, it was really nice. We went to the park, and he was very impressed with the park. We went to the band shell, took a bunch of pictures, and we came to town hall, and he enjoyed it. And, he was like, "What is your most exciting story?" I have a mayor who drove a plane in World War II, and I don't know, another one's been in a movie, and another one's telling ghost stories, and I was like, "Dude, I have 3 kids, and I work at the elementary school. I have nothing exciting to tell you."
No major fight during lunch, people throwing food? Anything?
Closest I've ever been to in a fight was here.
Oh, that was not good.
So, but it was nice.
Well, we don't consider you boring in any way, shape, or fashion.
Thank
We
you.
consider you, exciting.
I'm just thinking about that mayor, if he's still serving, that was a pilot in World War II.
Whatever.
Run back on that.
I don't know what for it. It was. He's got a website and stuff, and he's going to be on the news, so I might share. Not me on the news, but he interviewed somebody else that was on the news. And once he publishes like a link to his Facebook, I'll share it all. Y'all, because he did me in Mineral Springs and winged it. Like he tried to get lunch. He was like, "I think I've got all of Union County done." And I was like, "Oh, all 14?" He was like, "No."
So you never heard of Fairview?
So yeah, I did have to follow Rick. He kept texting me like, "Almost done," and I wanted to be like, "Tell Rick to wrap it up. It's my turn."
Rick can talk.
Yeah. Well, I got booted Saturday because Mayor White saw whatever his time.
Yeah, he can talk too.
So, but it was nice.
What was his name?
Mitchell Wheatley. He was a nice guy.
Well, next time, you just have to start making stuff up.
It was nice. He was a nice guy. It was nice to see somebody who cared. And he was like, small towns matter as much as like big towns. And our state is special. And so it was nice.
Oh, I've got a whole list of stuff. I didn't realize that the agenda had been. It's all my fault, Cheryl. Whenever I saw the agenda, I looked through there and there was no notification about the resolution on the consent agenda. But they got updated. No, that's okay. I did have questions about that, but we can talk. You know, I can talk about that.
I did email y'all.
Yeah, I looked at the resolution, but I fell I said no. Deb and I have tentatively a scheduled meeting with Chief McClendon at the fire department on Friday, next Friday. We're waiting on him to confirm. And the goal is to do nothing more than just open up dialogue and communications with the fire department, just so that they know that we're here and that if there's anything that we can do to help them or vice versa with the safety of the community, that would be great. I understand that you've already spoken to them about the National Night Out and there's something else.
I invited them to the meeting on.
Yeah, that's right.
Because Waxhaw had been involved, but not Wesley Chapel.
Right.
David, are you going to the firehouse to meet?
I don't know where we're meeting at this point.
If you decide to go to the firehouse, right there by the side of the front door, you should read all the names on that silver plaque.
David?
Yes, sir.
Could you ask them when all Westwood Chapel residents will be in Westwood Chapel?
I will not ask about it on the first meeting, no, sir.
No.
But that may be something that we can do at some point. Yeah.
John and I did discuss that at the county level with two of the county commissioners.
Second point, I'm assuming that we have a new chair for the planning board. Okay. All right, well, we'll scratch off that point. The third item, of which you guys got reports, I think, about our meeting. Long, Amanda and I met with Aston Properties. Super good meeting. They were impressed with us having a draft of the comp plan. I was impressed in that they are continuing to push interest in building this out. In the course of conversations with them, they asked, I said, what would you guys like to see? And of course, we shared a lot of the items that came up in the comp plan survey. But one of the things that really got their eyebrows raised was an independent hardware store. I had a meeting last week with Ron Bender of Oracle, who is, I think he's a regional manager here in Sharon. Oracle is the fastest growing independent hardware distributor in the world. So I figured that if anybody knew if there was a need for a hardware store in this area, they would know. And within minutes after the meeting was over, he'd sent me a full demographic study on Wesley Chapel and why we need a hardware store.
You send it to Aston?
Not yet. I'm waiting on council's approval, and I'll be glad to share this with you guys. But it's pretty impressive. Product supply. There's a product supply of $7.5 million in the 12-mile radius of, actually, of here. I gave them this address. The demand is $34.5 million. Established supply, which I didn't know what that was. I had to call things like, product supply is if I break the blade on my chainsaw, I've got to go buy one. But established supply is, I need pine needles every month. I need pool chemicals every month, that sort of thing. Ongoing sales, I guess. A supply of $15.5 million and a demand of almost $100 million. Yeah. But he sent a 23-page report that I'll be glad to share with Cheryl so that she can share with you guys. But, all kinds of stuff. Households, is it rented? Is it owned? And I guess he knew that, maybe I had some interest in doing it myself. There's also a category of how close we are to area hospitals. So, all kinds of stuff. But I feel like that this is information that would be valuable to Aston. And like I told him, our goal is to be matchmaker. We don't own the property. We have no desire for what goes on the property as long as it fills out the property and it fits within the parameters that we have set.
While meeting with them, did you note that 100% of what they do have built here is leased?
Yes.
And there are no open spaces.
And they have submitted an application for a Chase Bank, right?
We're talking to them.
Well, I think if they were just open another strip section for more shops,
They might.
they would fill up like that.
They said they could.
Yeah, they have, to this point, not built anything speculatively here because they didn't want vacant
Ever.
space. They feel like that they might need to at this point.
Great.
Dave, did you get that hardware store? I'll put your name on a plaque on the side.
So, like plaques. Yeah.
The plaque store.
Is that it? All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Got a second? All in favor? Thanks, guys.
Yeah, I was at Hawkins' place, trying to buy a refrigerator.
You know what's happening on the town?
No, I didn't.